He thought he could play with me, but he never knew who he was messing with. Those words still echo inside me, sharp as broken glass. My voice trembles when I say them, but not from weakness anymore. Oh, it's from fire, from the storm I carry now, a storm that he himself created. At first glance, you'd never think I had such a story inside me. You'd see someone ordinary, someone soft, someone who believed in love and trust, someone who gave everything with an open heart. That was me. Before him, he walked into my life like the perfect dream. You know those moments when everything just feels too good, too perfect? Almost like fate itself is smiling on you. That's how it started. A smile, a laugh, a touch. It all seemed real. And I foolishly believed it was. But behind that smile, behind those sweet words, was a game. A dangerous game where my heart was just another pawn. He thought I wouldn't notice. He thought I would break and stay broken. He thought my love made me weak. But let me tell you this, sometimes the kindest heart hides the strongest fire. Sometimes the one you betray is the one you should have feared from the very beginning. Because when trust shatters, when love turns into ashes, something awakens inside, a voice that whispers, "No more." And that's where my story begins. I remember the night everything shifted. The night I realized the truth. His words didn't match his actions anymore. His promises sounded empty, his eyes used to look at me like I was his everything. But slowly they drifted unfocused, like they were searching for something or someone else. Have you ever felt that ache? That slow stabbing pain of knowing something is wrong but not having the proof yet? It's like drowning while everyone else thinks you're still breathing. I tried to push the thoughts away. I told myself, no, you're just overthinking. He loves you. He chose you. But deep down, my heart already knew the truth. Betrayal has a smell, a silence, a shadow that creeps in. You can't always see it, but you feel it, and I felt it. It started with late replies. A phone turned upside down. Excuses that sounded rehearsed. A coldness in his voice when it used to be warm. Little by little, the man I thought I knew started disappearing, and in his place was a stranger wearing his face. I remember standing in front of the mirror one night asking myself, what if it's true? What if he's been lying to me all along? My reflection looked back at me with tears in her eyes. A girl who wanted so badly to believe in him, but belief doesn't protect you. Love doesn't protect you. Sometimes love blinds you to the knife in their hand, and that knife was already pressed against me, waiting to cut. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to fall into the deepest darkness I had ever known, and out of that darkness, I would rise. He thought this story would end with me broken, begging, forgotten. But no. This story ends with him on his knees, wishing he had never underestimated me. Because when a heart that loves deeply is betrayed, revenge doesn't just become an option. It becomes destiny. So let me take you back to the very beginning, to how it all started, to how love turned into betrayal and betrayal turned into fire. This is my story. They say the most dangerous lies are the ones wrapped in beauty. At first, though, there was no danger, no warning. Just warmth. Just the feeling of something new and magical stirring in my life. I still remember the day we met as if it happened yesterday. It wasn't extraordinary in setting. No movie-like moment under fireworks, no dramatic music in the background. Just an ordinary day, the kind you almost forget. And maybe that's what makes it unforgettable for me. Because from something so simple, my entire world changed. I was at a cafe that afternoon, tucked away in the corner with my notebook and a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. Writing was my way of escaping, my way of piecing together the mess of everyday life. And then, there he was. He walked in like he owned the air around him, not in a proud, arrogant way. No, he carried himself with a kind of quiet confidence, the kind that draws eyes without even trying. His smile wasn't forced. His laughter wasn't loud, it was natural, effortless. Like the world bent itself slightly in his favor. And for reasons I still can't fully explain, my eyes couldn't leave him. He noticed me after a while. I pretended to be busy scribbling in my notebook, but the truth? I was curious. Curious about the stranger who made the air feel lighter just by walking into the room. It didn't take long before he approached. "What are you writing?" he asked, his voice smooth but gentle. The kind of voice that feels like it knows how to speak directly to your heart. I laughed nervously, hiding my notebook. Just thoughts. Nothing important, but to him it seemed important. He leaned closer, eyes catching mine, and in that instant, something shifted. It's hard to explain, but have you ever felt like you've known someone your whole life even though it's the first time you've spoken? That's what it felt like. From that moment, the conversations never stopped. Days turned into nights, messages into calls, calls into hours that vanished without notice. He wanted to know everything about me. My favorite books, my childhood dreams, my scars, my fears. And the way he listened? Oh, the way he listened made me believe I mattered in a way I never had before. It was intoxicating. He made me laugh when the world felt heavy. He held my hand like it was something precious, fragile. He looked at me with eyes that told stories without words. And for the first time in so long, I felt seen, truly seen. Love didn't rush in like a storm. It crept in quietly, softly, like the rising sun you don't notice until it has already filled the sky. One day I woke up and he wasn't just someone I met at a cafe. He was someone I couldn't imagine my days without. Every detail about him became precious. The way his hair fell into his eyes when he was tired. The way he spoke about his dreams as if they were already waiting for him just beyond the horizon. The way he would pause mid-conversation, just to look at me like I was the only thing that existed in that moment. And I gave myself to it fully. Every laugh, every tear, every piece of my heart. Because isn't that what love is supposed to be? A leap of faith. A surrender. A belief that someone will hold your heart as carefully as you hand it to them. Looking back now, I realize how easily trust can blind you. But in that moment, I didn't care. All I knew was that I was happy. Happier than I had ever been. There were nights when we would sit in his car, parked under a sky littered with stars, and he would hold me close, whispering things that sounded like forever. I don't ever want to lose you, he'd say. You're my everything, and I believed him. How could I not? His words felt like promises carved into stone. His touch felt like home. His presence felt like destiny. Friends began to notice the glow on my face. They teased me, saying I was in love, and I would smile shyly, brushing it off. But deep inside, I knew they were right. I was falling, and I didn't want to stop. If only I had known then what I know now. If only I had seen the cracks beneath the perfect surface. But love makes you blind, doesn't it? You don't want to look for shadows when the light feels so warm. And so I let myself sink deeper into him, into us, into the dream of a love that I thought would last forever. I didn't know that the same hands that held me so gently would one day let me go so cruelly. I didn't know that the same voice that whispered forever would one day be the one to silence me with betrayal. But for now, in this chapter of my life, it was love. Pure, beautiful, fragile love. And I clung to it like it was everything because at the time, it was. Love in its purest form makes you feel safe. It cradles you in warmth, convinces you the world can't touch you as long as you're in someone's arms. That's how it felt in the beginning. It's safe, unshakable, unbreakable. But then, something changed. It wasn't sudden, not at first. No dramatic shift, no explosion. Just small things, tiny cracks that I tried to ignore. Because when you love someone, you don't want to see the truth. You tell yourself it's nothing, that you're overthinking, that maybe you're just tired. But deep down, I knew. It started with the little silences, the pauses in conversations that didn't exist before. Where there used to be laughter, there was hesitation. Where there used to be closeness, there was distance, invisible but heavy. He stopped calling me goodnight sometimes. At first it was only once or twice. He'd apologize, say he fell asleep early, and I believed him. Of course I believed him, why wouldn't I? But then it happened again, and again, and soon, the words goodnight felt like they belonged to someone else. The phone calls that once stretched for hours became shorter. The text messages once filled with excitement and affection now felt rushed, dry, mechanical. And then there was the phone itself. I used to glance at his screen without worry. He would text in front of me, laugh at messages, share memes, show me photos. But suddenly he started tilting it away, placing it face down, turning off notifications. The first time I noticed, I told myself, maybe he's just busy. Maybe it's work. Maybe I'm imagining things. But once you notice a red flag, it's impossible to unsee it. There were moments when he would disappear for hours. No reply, no call. And when I finally reached him, his excuses were smooth. Too smooth. Sorry, my phone died. Sorry, I was with a friend. Sorry, I just needed some space. And yet something in his voice betrayed him. Something cold, something distant, something I couldn't explain but could feel. I tried to bring it up once. I asked him if something was wrong, if maybe I had done something to upset him. He smiled, kissed my forehead, and said, "You worry too much. Everything's fine," but everything was not fine. His eyes told the truth. His lips tried to hide. They no longer lingered on me the way they used to. They darted, shifted, avoided. Love used to burn in them like fire. Now it was fading, flickering like the last sparks of a dying flame. And still, I held on, because love makes you hopeful even in the face of doubt. I told myself, it's just stress. It's just a phase. He still loves me. He has to. But nights grew colder. His embrace felt less like home and more like habit. The warmth was slipping away and I couldn't stop it. There were times when I caught him smiling at his phone, a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in weeks. When I asked, he brushed it off. Just a joke from a friend. But deep down, my heart twisted. Because I knew that smile wasn't mine anymore. Every detail that once made me feel loved now made me feel replaced. And yet I stayed quiet. I swallowed my doubts. I convinced myself that love meant patience, that if I waited long enough the closeness would return. But it didn't. Instead, the distance grew wider. He became unpredictable, warm one moment, cold the next. Sweet words one day, silence the next. It was like living on a roller coaster, never knowing if tomorrow would bring love or indifference in my heart. It began to break quietly, not in one shattering blow, but in tiny pieces falling apart day by day. Do you know what it feels like to lie awake at night staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation in your head, asking yourself if you said something wrong? If you weren't enough, if maybe. Love was never real to begin with. That's where I was, and yet I clung to him. Because walking away felt impossible. Because I still remembered the man who once held me under the stars and promised me forever. Because I wanted to believe that man was still there somewhere. But love has a cruel way of turning into fear. Fear of losing them. Fear of the truth. Fear of facing the reality that maybe you've been giving your heart to someone who never deserved it. And though I didn't want to admit it yet, that reality was already knocking on my door. I could feel it. The man I loved was slipping away, and soon I would discover why. The thing about lies is that they can only hide for so long. No matter how carefully someone covers their tracks, truth has a way of breaking through the cracks. And when it does, it doesn't whisper. It screams. I never wanted to be the kind of person who snoops. I believed in trust. I believed that love meant respect, honesty, faith. But when the silences grew louder, when the distance turned into walls, I couldn't ignore it anymore. My heart was already carrying the weight of suspicion, and one night, I gave in. His phone buzzed on the table. Just once, a simple vibration. But it felt like thunder in my chest. He was in the shower, humming casually, unaware. My eyes locked on the screen, on the name flashing across it. A name I didn't recognize. A woman's name. My hands trembled as I picked it up. I told myself, don't do it. You'll only hurt yourself. Trust him. But trust was already bleeding out of me. And when I opened the message, my world shattered, words I'll never forget. Words that weren't meant for me. Words filled with affection, with intimacy, with promises that he once whispered only to me. Last night was amazing. I can't wait to see you again. Don't worry. She suspects nothing. That word cut deeper than any blade ever could. I stood there, frozen, staring at the truth I had tried so desperately to deny. My chest tightened, my breath caught, my knees nearly gave way beneath me. Because there it was, in proof. Undeniable, merciless proof that the man I loved, the man I trusted with everything, had been lying. Playing with me. When he stepped out of the shower, smiling, wrapped in a towel, he had no idea. No idea that the walls around his secret had collapsed. No idea that I knew. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time I didn't see the man I loved. I saw a stranger, a liar, a betrayer. He noticed the phone in my hand, the tears in my eyes, and his smile faltered. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice shaky but still trying to play innocent. "What's wrong?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "This is what's wrong." I showed him the screen. The messages. The evidence he couldn't erase. His face went pale. His lips parted, searching for words. Excuses. Lies. Anything. "It's not what it looks like," he stammered. But it was exactly what it looked like. "Don't you dare," I snapped, my voice louder now, trembling with rage and heartbreak. "Don't you dare stand there and tell me it's nothing. I gave you everything. My heart, my trust, my soul. And this is what you do? He tried to reach for me, but I pulled away. The thought of his touch made my skin crawl. The same hands that once held me with tenderness were the same hands that betrayed me behind my back. Tears blurred my vision, but the pain was sharp, merciless. My chest felt like it was caving in, crushed by the weight of betrayal. He begged. He swore it was a mistake. He said he loved me, that she meant nothing. But his words were empty. They bounced off me like stones against armor. Because love isn't supposed to feel like this. Love isn't supposed to destroy you. That night I crumbled. I collapsed into tears so heavy I thought they would drown me. I screamed into the silence of my room, clutching my chest as if I could physically hold my broken heart together. How could he? How could the man who once swore I was his everything treat me like I was nothing? Every memory replayed in my head like a cruel movie. The laughter, the promises, the whispers under the stars, and all poisoned now. All fake, all a performance, and the worst part? He looked me in the eyes every single day, told me he loved me while living a lie behind my back. The pain was unbearable. It felt like my soul was being ripped apart piece by piece. I wanted to hate him instantly, to erase him from my heart. But love doesn't vanish that easily. And that's what made it worse. Because even in the middle of betrayal, part of me still longed for the man I thought he was. But that man was gone. He never existed. He was just a mask. The truth hit me harder than anything else ever had. I had fallen in love with a lie, and in that moment, something inside me broke. I was no longer the same person. The girl who believed in fairy tales, in forever, in unconditional love, and she died that night. What rose in her place was someone else. Someone colder, someone stronger, someone who would never be played with again. He thought he could betray me and walk away without consequence. He thought I would cry, forgive, and stay, but he was wrong, because pain doesn't just destroy. Sometimes it awakens. And inside me, revenge was already beginning to bloom. Pain has a strange way of reshaping you. At first it crushes you, leaves you on the floor gasping for air, wondering how you'll ever stand again. But then, slowly, it starts to carve something new out of you. The night I discovered his betrayal, I thought my life was over. I curled up on my bed, tears soaking the pillow, body trembling as if my heart itself was shattering into dust. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. Every time I tried to breathe, I remembered his lies. I stopped eating for days. The food had no taste. Music felt empty. Even the sun shining through my window mocked me, as if the world didn't care that mine had collapsed. My friends noticed, of course. They asked if I was okay, and I smiled weakly, lying through my teeth. How could I explain that I had been played like a fool? That the man I loved, the one I trusted with every fragile piece of myself, had turned out to be a stranger? The truth is, I wasn't okay. I was drowning. But here's the thing about drowning. Sometimes when your head finally breaks the surface, the air you inhale ignites something fierce inside you. One night, after hours of crying, I dragged myself to the mirror. I barely recognized the person staring back at me. Eyes swollen, lips cracked, shoulders slumped. She looked weak, broken, defeated, and I hated her. Not because she was hurting, but because she still loved him. Because even after everything, some part of her heart still longed for him. That's when I realized he hadn't just betrayed me. He had stolen me. He had taken away my joy, my confidence, my sense of worth, and suddenly, a thought flickered in my mind, a thought sharp enough to slice through the fog of pain. Why should he get to walk away clean while I suffer? That thought lit a fire. It started small, just an ember. But with every memory of his lies, with every replay of those messages, with every echo of his fake promises, the ember grew hotter, stronger, brighter. Revenge. I didn't say it out loud, not yet. But the word pulsed through me like electricity. It became the rhythm of my heartbeat. This pain, this heartbreak, this endless ache, it wasn't going to end with me crying into the night. No, it was going to end with him knowing what it felt like to be broken, to be deceived, to lose everything he thought he controlled. But before I could even think of revenge, I had to change. I stopped answering his calls, stopped reading his apologies, stopped letting his lies poison me further. He begged at first, desperate to pull me back, to keep me under his thumb. But the more he tried, the stronger I became. I went silent. And silence, I learned, is its own kind of weapon. I started rebuilding myself piece by piece. I forced myself out of bed. I went for walks even when my legs felt like lead. I looked at the sky, reminding myself that there was still beauty beyond this heartbreak. I surrounded myself with friends who reminded me who I was before him. Someone kind, someone strong, someone worthy. And day by day, the broken girl in the mirror began to fade. In her place stood someone sharper, steadier, fiercer. Don't get me wrong, but the pain didn't vanish. No, it stayed, like a scar carved into my soul. But instead of weakening me, it became fuel. Every tear I had cried hardened into resolve. Every sleepless night turned into a reminder of why I could never, ever let him win. He thought he had destroyed me. He thought I would remain shattered, clinging to the pieces he left behind. But he underestimated me, because betrayal doesn't just end a love story. Sometimes it begins a new one, a story of justice, a story of revenge. I promised myself that night I will rise, and when I do, he will regret ever playing with my heart. And so the girl who once believed in fairy tales died. In her place, a new version of me was born, one who no longer lived for love but for something far more powerful. Payback. When pain turns into purpose, your mind stops wandering and starts calculating. I didn't want chaos. I didn't want violence. I wanted something cleaner, something that would shut him down where it hurt most. His pride, his control, the carefully built life he showed the world. I wanted him exposed, plain, simple, true. Revenge, I decided, would be patient. It would be intelligent. It would be surgical. Not to destroy for the sake of hurting, but to remove the mask he hid behind so everyone could finally see the person he really was. Step 1. Collect proof. I already had the messages on his phone, the evidence that broke me, but scattered screenshots and a trembling memory weren't enough. If I wanted him to stop pretending, I needed a dossier, dates, times, patterns. I started saving everything, screenshots of messages, copies of emails, records of times he was unreachable, notes about places he claimed to be and where he actually wasn't. Little details that, when stitched together, formed a pattern too tight to deny. I kept everything organized. A simple notebook became my map. Each entry had a time, a place, and what he said. I annotated with my own observations, the lies I remembered, the excuses I had been fed. I didn't let emotion erase the facts. Facts, not fury, would make my plan unstoppable. Step 2. Witness accounts. I reached out, quietly, to people who had seen the pieces I hadn't, not to smear him with gossip, but to corroborate truth. There was his coworker who once joked about his late-night team meetings that always ended suspiciously. There was the barista who'd noticed him laughing at a message during a date with me. I didn't ambush anyone. I didn't pressure them. I listened. People were willing to talk once they realized this was real and not drama. Step 3. Build the narrative. Proof on its own is cold. For a lie to be exposed, the truth has to be put into a story that people understand. So I started shaping what I would show and how. I wrote a simple timeline, from the first suspicious silence to the messages I found, and matched it with moments he had told the world. The contrast was brutal. The public portrait of a devoted partner versus the private life of someone who lied without shame. Step 4. Choose the stage. I thought about confrontation in private, but that could be cleaned up with apologies and crocodile tears. I needed a place where his performance would matter to him, where his image had weight. For him, that was his social circle, mutual friends, colleagues, the people who thought they knew him. The plan had to be public enough that his lies couldn't hide behind misunderstandings, but not cruelly humiliating. Exposure, yes. Public shaming, nope. And step 5, allies. Revenge is easier when you don't walk alone. I told only a few people I trusted, friends who had seen him change, who had watched me suffer. They were careful, loyal, and precise. We discussed the timing, the tone, the safest ways to reveal truth. They agreed. Show the facts, keep it calm, let people draw their own conclusions. Their presence meant I wouldn't be spun into the villain for staging something desperate. Having witnesses meant the story would be anchored in reality. Step 6. The reveal mechanics. I didn't want theatrics, no loud scenes or dramatic ambushes. Instead, I planned to place the facts where they would naturally surface, in conversations, in private messages to people he relied on, in a careful presentation to those whose opinions mattered to him. I would let the evidence speak, messages, screenshots, corroborating dates. I rehearsed how I would present it, not as an angry monologue, but as a calm set of facts. Calmness has a strange power. It lets the truth land without fight. Step 7. Protect myself. I thought about fallout. I thought about him spinning lies about people siding with charm instead of truth. So I prepared. I saved backups, secured copies of everything, and kept records of my outreach. If he tried to gaslight me, I wanted to be able to show that what I said was true, and not the product of pain or revenge alone. Preparation is armor. I put it on. Step 8. Timing. Patience was the hardest part. I watched his weekly habits, the times when his guard was down and when his mask was polished. I waited for a moment when he felt untouchable, when revealing the truth would make the greatest impact. It wasn't cruelty. It was strategy. The aim wasn't to ruin a life, but to remove the comfort of lying. Step 9. The moral frame. Before anything happened, I set a rule for myself. Expose, don't destroy. I would tell the truth. I wouldn't invent it. I would confront the lies, but I would not become the person he was. Revenge can consume a soul if it's not bound by rules. My revenge would be my return, not my downfall. Step 10. The personal change. While I planned, I continued the important, quieter work, rebuilding myself. A stronger version of me would deliver the truth, not a broken one. I started investing in myself in small ways. Late-night walks that cleared my head, enrolling in a course I'd always wanted, reclaiming rituals that belonged to me alone. Strength would make my words resonate. Confidence would make the exposure piercing. There was one final tactic I kept to myself, not because it was malicious, but because it was precise. I planned a conversation, not an accusation. I would sit him down and present the facts. I would give him the chance to explain, knowing full well the explanations would be empty. Then, calmly, I would present the pattern to those whose opinions mattered to him. The impact would be honest and sharp. The truth would not be my weapon. It would be the light. For 2 weeks, I lived like a ghost with a plan. I kept my cool in public, answered his messages rarely, and documented everything he did. The people around me noticed a change, not the clingy, pleading woman I had been, but someone who had found quiet resolve. That I knew would unsettle him more than any dramatic scene. When you plan revenge with a clear head, every move becomes deliberate. I wasn't out to humiliate him for the pleasure of it. I wanted him to feel the consequences of his choice, to be seen exactly as he had been in secret, to make him understand that playing with a heart could cost him the image he traded on. And beneath all of it, there was another truth driving me. Not the hunger for retribution alone, but the need to reclaim myself. The plan, the nights of preparation, the small acts of courage, and they were all part of me coming back to life. I didn't know then how he would fall. I only knew the shape of my actions and the weight of the truth I held. That was enough, because sometimes the cleverest revenge isn't loud. It's patient. It's methodical. It's the quiet dismantling of a lie until there's nothing left but the person who told it. The day of the reveal felt unreal, like walking into a movie set where every light was focused on me and my heartbeat was the only sound. I had rehearsed 1,000 different versions of how it might go, but rehearsals are small comfort when the moment arrives. The plan had to be precise, calm, clean. We chose the gathering carefully, a casual dinner among mutual friends at a restaurant he loved, a place where his image mattered and where he felt untouchable. He would be there with his smiles and his practiced charm, surrounded by people who admired him. That familiarity was part of the point. If he could keep lying in such a room, he might keep lying anywhere. I arrived with 2 friends who knew everything and held the rest of my proof in a quiet folder in my bag. My hands were steady. My voice had no tremor. People greeted us, the clinking of glasses and laughter filling the air like background music. He waved at me, his expression soft and casual, as if nothing had changed between us. For a moment I watched him, really watched him, like an observer cataloging a face I once loved. Dinner began. Small talk, jokes, the usual ease. He was on his best behavior, generous with compliments, quick with laughter, charming in a way that had once made me melt. I let it wash over me, feeling nothing but a growing clarity. Everything we had done to prepare, the notebook entries, the messages printed and annotated, the people willing to speak, felt like armor. When the moment came, I stood. The room quieted because when someone stands at a table in that way, people look. I asked for a moment. The attention shifted. He smiled, puzzled, the way someone smiles when they don't suspect a storm is coming. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't throw accusations like weapons. I opened the folder and laid the facts on the table. "Friends," I said, my voice even, "I need you to look at something. Not because I want to make a scene, but because I can't let a lie keep living as truth." I started with the timeline, simple, concise. Dates he had told everyone he was doing something respectable, and the messages and notes that proved otherwise. I placed printed screenshots side by side with images of his public social posts, the times and places mismatching so clearly that even casual listeners could see the pattern. I mentioned conversations I had had with mutual acquaintances who had noticed his strange habits. I read a few of the messages aloud, not to humiliate in front of strangers, but to let the truth land plainly. He blinked, then tried to laugh it off. "This is ridiculous," he said, voice pitched to minimize. "She's making this into something it's not." His gaze flicked to our friends, searching for sympathy, but we had prepared for that. One of the people I'd quietly spoken to in the weeks prior stood up. Calm, clear, she told a story, simple, factual, about seeing him leave a restaurant late one night with someone who was not me. Another friend mentioned that he'd always been vague about a business trip that happened to line up with those messages. They didn't shout accusations. They handed corroboration. The room shifted. The power of calm truth is underrated. When evidence sits on a table and reasonable people read it, it feels heavier than charm. People started whispering. Eyes moved from plate to plate to the man who was trying to recover control through charm. A few people exchanged looks that mixed surprise and disappointment, curiosity, and the sting of betrayal. He tried to explain. He tried excuses. He stammered about misunderstanding and poor wording and that it wasn't what it seemed. Each phrase sounded thinner than the last. I watched him scramble, watching his hands, his face flushing, the polite mask slipping in slow motion. The more he spoke, the less convincing he became. Then, the final blow, a voice from his workplace, someone he admired, who had been included in a private message chain I had shown privately earlier that day. They described an incident where he had spoken differently in public and privately acted in contradiction. It was small, but to people who had respected him, it was a pattern now visible. A few heads nodded. A couple of people shifted uncomfortably, as if remembering things that suddenly fit into a new picture. I didn't gloat. I didn't shout. I simply laid down the facts and let them speak. The room, once warm with laughter, cooled. Conversations that had been animated fell into awkward pauses. The man who had been the life of the party now sat with a face that betrayed him, color draining, jaw clenched, eyes searching for an answer that would make sense. "You could have told me," someone murmured. Not judgmental, just sad. "We liked you." He spoke less after that. His charm failed him because the audience had changed. Where his lies once fit into gaps, now there was light. Where his half-truths had seemed plausible, now they were brittle. He tried one last appeal, to sentiment, to memories, to the woman he had once loved. "Please," he said, voice low, desperation thin. "Don't make this worse. I can explain." The room remained quiet. A few people looked at me and I could see the question in their eyes. Did I want to humiliate him? Did I want revenge or closure? I shook my head slightly. I wanted neither cruelty nor forgiveness. I wanted truth to be recognized. The shame did what confrontation and evidence could not. He flinched as people, friends, colleagues, pivoted subtly away. The invitations that had been casual stopped in midair. Plans that were once easy to make now felt stiff and monitored. Reputation, once a shield, had been pierced not by malice but by simple, patient truth. He was losing what he thought he controlled. His narrative, his image, the comfortable assumptions people had made about him. After a while, he stood and left, the walkout the same but the atmosphere different. There was no dramatic scene at the door, no loud argument, just the quiet crumble of a carefully constructed life step by step. Those left at the table whispered among themselves. The hum of the restaurant slowly returned. I gathered my coat, feeling the eyes, sensing the shift. As we stepped out into the night, my friend squeezed my hand. I felt many things at once: relief, exhaustion, the bitter taste of justice mixed with pity. I didn't feel triumphant in the way I had once imagined revenge would feel. Instead, I felt a quiet, settling satisfaction, like a heavy door finally closed. He lost the image he had polished so carefully. He lost the certainty that people would always believe him. He lost the ease of slipping between versions of himself. He had underestimated the woman he thought he controlled. Its consequence was not a loud collapse, but a slow, irreversible unraveling. Walking away, I realized the reveal had been cleaner than I expected. Not because I had wanted to crush him, but because truth, when delivered with patience and proof, has a power that spectacle never does. The climax wasn't a public spectacle of ruin. It was the moment where the mask slid off and the reality remained. He would have to face what he had done. He would have to look at the empty space where trust used to sit. And for the first time since this began, I felt the freedom to breathe without waiting for his next lie. The execution was not the end of everything that would follow, but it was the point where the scales finally tipped. And sometimes tipping is all that matters. The night after the reveal, silence wrapped itself around me like a heavy blanket. My phone buzzed endlessly. Messages, missed calls, voice notes that played out like broken apologies. His number lit up again and again, each attempt more desperate than the last. At first, I didn't listen. I let the notifications pile up one after another, as if each new ping was a reminder of the control I had reclaimed. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me and I pressed play. His voice cracked. He begged, he pleaded. He said he was sorry, that I had misunderstood, that he was only confused. He promised change. He promised love. He promised things he never delivered when I had given him every chance before. And in every word I heard not love but fear. Fear of exposure, fear of losing the comfort he had taken for granted. He showed up the next day, waiting outside the places he knew I'd be. His eyes were swollen, his smile nervous, his body tense like a man who had been cornered. He tried to reach for my hand as though touch could erase truth. "Please," he whispered, voice trembling. "You don't understand. I messed up, but I can fix it. Give me another chance." Once those words would have cracked me open. Once my heart would have leapt at the promise of being chosen, of being fought for. But now, standing before him, I felt nothing but clarity. His regret came not from love, but from loss. Loss of me, yes, but more importantly, loss of the mask he wore so well. "I gave you chances," I said softly, my tone steady. "I gave you trust. I gave you love. You gave me lies." He tried again, louder this time, desperation painting every syllable. "I'll prove it. I'll change. Don't walk away from us." But here's the thing about betrayal. Once the mask falls, you can't put it back on. You can't unsee the truth. You can't unknow the lies. Love cannot live in the same house as deceit. For the first time, I saw him clearly, not as the man I once dreamed of, but as the boy who played with hearts because he never learned the value of one. And with that clarity came strength. I took a deep breath, my chest lighter than it had been in months. "You regret it now because you've lost control," I told him. "But regret is not the same as change, and I will not waste my future waiting for a man to learn lessons he should have known from the beginning." His face fell. He reached out again, but I stepped back. That simple motion, one step, felt like reclaiming the years he had stolen. I walked away. My steps were slow at first, but each one grew stronger, more certain. Behind me, I heard his voice fade into silence. Ahead of me, the world opened wide. The aftermath wasn't easy. Whispers followed for a while. Some people pitied him, others quietly admired me. I didn't feed the gossip. I didn't explain myself 1,000 times. I let the truth already exposed live on its own. And slowly, the weight I had carried dissolved. The sadness turned into wisdom. The anger transformed into resolve. I looked into the mirror one morning and saw not the broken girl who had cried into her pillow, but a woman who had faced betrayal, stood in the storm, and walked out stronger. He continued reaching out for weeks. His words shifted from desperate to bitter, then to silence. Regret was his shadow now, not mine. As for me, I chose myself. My laughter returned. My nights grew peaceful, and my future began to look like mine again. In the end, revenge hadn't been about destroying him, it had been about freeing me. And in the quiet of my heart, I finally whispered the truth I had been waiting to say. You lost me, and that is a regret you will carry, not me.